That's why I put a bit of hairspray in before I came out. It was all windy. I thought I'm going to have to be like that. How's it going? Oh, fist bump. Yeah, we'll get there.
Every time we're like this.
Yeah, I know. Did you come to the UK straight after Austria? You've been here, yeah. Spent a bit of time with the fam.
I got there quite late the other night. On Tuesday night we had like a dinner, but I didn't actually have the dinner. I just watched them eat. God, my pants are so baggy.
So Lewis, thanks for having a sit down with me.
Pleasure.
Home race, British Grand Prix. First of all, how are you feeling about this weekend?
I always feel great when I come here. The weather's been a bit up and down this week, but the anticipation of this Grand Prix is always like, everyone in the team is excited because everyone obviously gets to stay at home during the weekend. It's the only Grand Prix that the team, everyone gets to be so close to home to their families. And then we have the biggest turnout, you know, and the most amazing support here. So there's always like this is the race that you love to come to more than any.
Well, it's interesting you say that because it's actually 15 years since I came to my first ever Grand Prix, which was here. And it's funny that, because I don't know about you, but can you remember what happened 15 years ago at the British Grand Prix? It was 2008?
Yeah, the first win, yeah.
The first win?
Yeah.
That was one special weekend, I bet, for you.
British Grand Prix win. Oh, it was incredible. It wasn't actually going well until Sunday. So
fourth on the grid?
Yeah, fourth on the grid, mega start.
Mega start.
Then blitzed it. That was the best wet race probably ever had.
I was going to actually ask you that because obviously, you know, 2008, you won the race by over a minute, which, you know, for me, it was watching one of the best drives I've seen in Formula One, like that margin of, you know, to win by that. It was such treacherous conditions, drivers going off left, right and centre.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It was an action-packed race. How much further do you think you would have won that race by if it was this weekend in those conditions, same cars? How much better have you got over the years?
Oh well, firstly, I would have won by further if they'd given me the tyres I had asked for. So in the race, at the time I asked for extreme wets towards the end, and the extreme wets were like another 3 seconds faster or something crazy. So I think there's a couple of people, I think it's Rubens maybe, had gone onto them, and they didn't listen to me, so they put me into his on. So
now you would have a more strong opinion.
So it would have been even further ahead.
Yeah.
Because I think we lapped everyone up to P3. It was
Which is insane.
It was so good. Well, I think that was just all raw ability and talent. And what I would say just now is obviously, as you travel the world, as you grow older, you learn so much more that you just never know until you get there. Like, you can't even imagine what you're going to know in 10 years' time and how much easier things are for you, how much more efficient you can be with your time and how you apply yourself and how you're able to engage with people differently and all those different things. So, you know, I'm a much better team player than I was back then. I'm able to galvanize a large group of people and energy and channel that in and still hopefully have that raw edge talent. I would say then I took a lot more risk.
Really?
Than I do today, yeah. Because back then I couldn't comprehend at the time that if I took a risk, I felt like it was more how it would impact me, not necessarily how it would impact a whole team of 1,000,
so maybe
2,000 people.
Bigger picture thinking.
Yeah, exactly. So now I know the steps and the things that I do, who it impacts and how many people and how important it is. So then you have to think about the decisions you make. With a little bit of better understanding.
Yeah. Well, obviously that was one of many wins for you here at Silverstone. You've won at this place 7 times since then. You know, that's a lot of victories at one track. What is it about coming home, coming to Silverstone that just gets you, you know, in that mindset where you can just find that edge?
I think it's just the whole week. It's just I got here straight after Austria, so I usually try and come here at the beginning of the week. It's some home comfort food. It's
what is that? What's your go-to when you get back to the UK?
Well, I had dinner with the family the other day, and they were having roast dinner, but I didn't have it. But normally it's roast dinner.
Yeah.
You know, crispy potatoes and all that. But I get to have the I can't even have I don't even think I can have the gravy anymore.
Really?
Remember those little XO blocks?
Yeah.
The gravy was so good. But yeah, I think it's being close to your family. My whole family ends up coming to the race. Roscoe gets to come to the Grand Prix. And yeah, I think and then the track is phenomenal. It really is.
Maggots Beckett, Stowe, it's got everything, hasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, he really hit on whoever designed it back in the day. I don't know who it is.
Straight.
Yeah. I don't love the new section as much as the old, but I think it's better for racing for sure. But yeah, the actual just the circuit from the ground up is just epic, and it's such a cool spot as well, spread over such a long. You get the headwind down into Stowe, and the downforce is insane. So it's just a phenomenal racing circuit, and it's all medium and high speed corners. So.
And what about this season? We've got to talk about this season. Obviously, it's been a difficult year for Mercedes, for you in general. At the end of 2022, it looked promising that you guys were moving in the right direction. You were closing in on the Red Bulls, and then this season, it's not quite started in maybe the way that you would have hoped.
Yeah.
With the upgrades, you probably bring in some this weekend, I'm assuming. Where do you think you can get to? Do you think you can start to challenge Red Bull, or is it fighting for second as it currently stands?
I think it's, last year was very, very, very hard. I can't even put words on how difficult it was for the team.
First year since entering F1 where you haven't won a Grand Prix.
Yeah, but just the car was just, I won't say anymore. Right? And obviously the work we've done in terms of, towards the end of the year, obviously we had a good race, but then to start this year again, kind of on the back foot, it's definitely been a much more positive year for us. I think we've made bigger strides. We've had some good results. We've been on the podium more. It's really hard to predict where we're gonna with the steps that we're starting to take. We have a new wing this weekend, front wing, so it's not a huge update, but people work so hard just for that wing. So I'm hoping that it helps us take a step in the right direction. Bit by bit, as we bolt on these things, the car is becoming more and more of a race car. And look, if we're competing like last year towards the end of the season, on one side that's a good thing. On another is like it means the others have probably switched off and focused on the next year. I really don't care like what position I finish in this year. I'm focused on just trying to give the best development information for the team, working with the guys to make sure we steer this car in the right way. And when we start the first race or the first test next year, we hit the ground running. We don't have bouncing. We have the rear downforce we need, and the car is efficient, and we can keep up with everybody. That's like my dream.
Yeah.
So I'm like looking more long further down the road.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned looking long term and down the road, because there's a lot of questions, and bet you get asked it all the time about how long do you see yourself staying in F1? How long do you think you can keep going at this level? So what's your answer to that? How long do you expect to stay in
honestly,
F1?
I have days where I'm like, oh God, I don't know if I have moments where I'm like, I don't know if I can keep going. And that's just based on there's a lot of travel. There's a lot of traveling. There's a lot of time away from, the sacrifices that people make in their careers, and striking a balance between social life, family life, and career being the best you can be. Something has to give, and the other two, which are the most important, take a hit. And so I think about that often, but then I get into the paddock and I get in the car and I'm like, damn, I love this so much.
Still get that same buzz when you
Yeah.
first jumped in 2007?
Yeah, I definitely get the same buzz. I would say in last year's car and this year's car, I get in with hype, and then you get in and you're like, damn, it's bouncing, or you got some sort of problem with the car. So it's not as enjoyable to drive, for example, as like the W8.
Mm-hmm.
But I can see myself being here still in 5 years' time, or for the next 5 years.
A lot of people at home will be fairly happy to hear that news.
Well, I mean, but it can change at any point, But I'm grateful for the support, and I'm working hard to just stay focused, to get on, make sure I'm on top of my game. So then, eventually when we do have the car, where we're supposed to be, So I'm still massively competitive, still training hard, and still massively focused. So.
Well, you've been in this sport for so long now. you know, now you're sort of, you know, at this stage in your career, do you ever sit there and when you're, you know, having these thoughts about, you know, how long have I got left and all these sort of things, do you ever sit down and think what you want to leave behind, what your legacy in the sport you want people to be talking about in years to come, about what, obviously your achievements speak for themselves, but aside from that?
I don't ever think of, honestly, I don't think about like people talking about me when I leave, because honestly, I don't generally have a care for that. Like when I move on, the past is the past. What I am working towards, and that's why I started Mission 44, that's why I did the Hamilton Commission. I do dream of making this place more accessible for people from all different backgrounds, whether it's with disabilities, whether it's for women, whether it's for people of color, and from diverse backgrounds. And you know, I really am focused on transforming the lives of young kids that don't necessarily see themselves here currently, but I want to be able to change that, and I want to be able to look back. If I can look back in 20 years' time or whatever it is, and see a sport that's much more reflective of the outside world or the grandstands, you know, that would really make me proud to have been a part of that. So that's what I would want to be remembered for. I think when I was younger, it was being remembered for having the most wins, but that stuff's kind of irrelevant for me now.
Well, it's interesting, obviously, that you were mentioning that, because I've only spent the last 4 years in and around the Formula One paddock, but I've seen those changes, you know, happening already in front of my eyes in terms of more diversity. Obviously, me with my disability being accepted and allowed in the paddock. So I definitely think that you should, you know, give yourself a pat on the back for that, because I'm seeing the influence that you've had in the world of Formula One already firsthand.
Great, thank you, I appreciate that.
Let's talk a little bit about some of the stuff that you've mentioned recently, and I wanted to get into, there's been a lot of talk about, you know, Formula One, there's always a situation where a team sort of has the upper hand and dominates the sport for a little while. We've seen it over the years. Obviously at the minute it looks like Red Bull are in that phase where they've got that advantage, and recently you were talking about, you know, how they're already probably planning on next year's car and, you know, getting a head start in that department. So
I saw all the things that spiraled into, you know, and they're like, oh, you didn't say anything when you... The truth is, it's something we've been talking, you know, we'd had conversations and we've been talking about it even when we were having our dominance. And look, I remember when there was times we had really good battles with Ferrari, and then I remember times where we had a chunk of a gap. And for me, that wasn't really... Of course I wanted to be at the front, I wanted to be fighting, but having a half a second gap to the car behind just wasn't, it doesn't really feel, you want to have close racing. That's what racing's all about. When you're in go-karts, that's what you have, So I think they changed the rules to put this budget cap in. It's supposed to level the field, and it hasn't done that. So all I'm saying is, like, we just have to continue to have the conversation. You know, maybe at the moment, if we keep things the way they are, maybe it'll be Ferrari next to have several years of dominance, and then it will be someone else. Maybe McLaren will be, or maybe Mercedes will be back in again. But I think that's not what's best for the fans ultimately. And even if we end up getting back to the front end, what I'm talking about is we shouldn't be able to have dominance for multiple years. You know,
you want it to be tough at the top.
Yeah, it's got to be tough. It's got to be closer for us all, and I think that's what will make it more exciting for fans. Just from a fan point of view of growing up watching the Grand Prix, I don't think anybody wants to see the period that I had, the period Michael has, the period that Vettel had, and now Max will be having. You know, there is a chance that the Red Bull, with the cost cap and the way it's set up now, they're so far ahead that they could dominate for the next 3 years. And maybe for the Verstappen fans, that's enjoyable, and of course for Max it is, but I'm just saying for a sport, we definitely need to just have the conversation of how we can try and make it better, bring everyone closer, and have more closer duels at the front of the championship moving forward.
I guess it's just hard sometimes for fans to, you know, to see that, because they see you winning the races and celebrating on the podium like you deserve to, but they don't see the bigger picture and the stuff you're talking about.
Well, the thing is, because when you're actually in it, you're working as hard as you can and giving it everything. So you feel, you know, when you work towards something with a team, you feel, and Max and his team have done an exceptional job, and they truly deserve the success they're having. And I'm not trying to attain that at all. As I said, it's just about the conversation so that we don't have this, my period or Schumacher's period, just continue to
Don't
repeat.
want to keep repeating history.
Time and time again, we've got to continue to make changes and improve as a sport, so we have closer battles in the championship. Like having that edge of the wire championship battle to the last race is the greatest thing.
A thrill.
Oh man, it's amazing. And the more teams you have in it, the better it will be. So I hope that we can all work towards that.
Well, Lewis, it's been a privilege to sit down with you at the British Grand Prix. Best of luck for the weekend, for Sunday, in front of all the home fans. I'm sure we'll be giving you our best to see how you get on.
Thank you,
yeah,
so good to see you, mate. Great job.
Cheers,
You're
mate.
a pro now, man.
Thanks,
proper pro.
Don't know about that.
Yeah.
Don't know about that, man.
No, you're doing great.
Cheers,
Really
mate.
proud of everything you're doing.
Thanks, appreciate that.
Keep going. You're looking as nice as
Doing all right, mate. Doing all right.
You might be too heavy for the car then.
Yeah, I know. Although I've got a little bit of a weight advantage now. Cool. There you go. Have a good one this weekend, yeah?
Mate. Have a good weekend.
Cheers.
Cheers, guys. Thank you.
See you later.